Hey, amazing cycling friends. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode from Secrets in the Saddle. And as you know, it's the January cycling race series. So I've gone around and I've been looking for races locally, globally to bring you as a way to know what's out there, right? Like I am so profoundly amazed at some of the cool events that are happening globally in the cycling world. So before we get into this episode, because this one here, if you're local to me, you know about this race series. If you've ever started racing or triathlon, odds are you've done a couple of these races to grow as a triathlete, to try it first time, maybe just to stay local. Anyways, before we get into it, go to askcoachsylvie.ca for my free downloads. I'm going to be adding something soon, so make sure you get in there for the updates. And also don't forget to follow me on Instagram at sylvie_cyclist and the podcast, Secrets from the Saddle podcast. Now, you are going to be amazed. You know who we're going to be talking about today? Somersault Events. Now, if you've ever been in the Ottawa region, these events have been going on for like literally 30 years. So maybe you didn't know, and I didn't know, but Somersault had been sold to a new owner, Adam Caracas. Now, Adam Caracas is a pretty extraordinary guy. He also owns the franchise in the region for VeloFix. And here's the thing. We're going to talk to Adam today about Somersault Events and how he's making changes that are more positive and that the racers are going to really enjoy. Plus, I'm going to be interviewing him, the person, the franchisee of VeloFix. Now, that episode is 192, so make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss that one, because that one's a pretty interesting, like, oh my gosh, what a guy. Like, so young, like 29. It's just like my last guest in Sierra Leone, Africa, stylish, who both of them extraordinary guys, super young, doing great things for cycling. So don't forget Somersault. Now, if you've ever done one of their events, they're known to have single day events with about 12 different races in the same day, which is pretty cool because there's something for everyone. And my cycling club used to volunteer for a couple of their events every year. So we've kind of missed that, and we're super excited that he's now the new owner. But make sure that you are around and you're subscribed for his episode 192. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram and the podcast and Somersault. Plus, don't forget to get those free downloads at askcoachsylvie.ca. So with that, enjoy the episode. All right, welcome back to another episode of Secrets in the Saddle, All Things Cycling Podcast with your host, Sylvie Dow. And I have a special guest today, Adam Caracas, who is sitting in Ottawa, not too far from me. And he is going to share, he's an event organizer for one of the longest standing event companies in our region, Somersault Events. I think it was called Somersault. Everybody who's local, who has ever gone into triathlons in this region has started with Somersault. They have sprint Adam's going to do, but they have sprint tries, Olympic, full Ironman distances, all in the region here. I have actually personally done a couple 20 years ago. Then I decided triathlons weren't for me, but I'm so excited to have Adam here. He's also a serial entrepreneur. We are going to have him back for another episode for his VeloFix business. But right now, Adam, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited too.
All right. So I always, and I forgot to mention this, but I always start the podcast off with how you got into cycling and then how it led you into this trajectory of taking over Somersault.
Yeah, my intro to cycling is kind of a crazy story. And it was only, it's
Love
only
it.
been, gosh, it's, yeah, less than 10 years ago. So now that I think about it, it doesn't seem like that long ago now that, I'm the age that I am kind of thing, but it seems like a lifetime ago in a certain way. But when I was in first year university, I played high level soccer and then I was on the GG's men's volleyball team. So I wasn't even a cyclist. I played other sports. I was a kind of a jack of all trades, master of none, which, lended itself well to being a triathlete eventually. But while I was playing volleyball, it's a long story, but the crux of it is I ended up breaking my legs. I broke a few bones in my feet and my lower limbs, so like the tibia, fibula, and my rehab was all swimming and cycling. So
Of course.
I learned to swim. I cycled on that cheap spin bike in the physio clinic, and then I always enjoyed running just from soccer and just from being a multi-sport athlete, like multiple sport athlete. And then turns out if you tie all those three things together, it becomes a new sport called triathlon. And I think the idea of doing something adventurous and new lended itself well to, a young man in his 20s,
Mhm.
someone who was just generally had a love for sport. And it was a good part of kind of the rehab process. So training for my first triathlon became part of my rehab goal. Uh, you go from being in a cast with the crutches and whatnot, and the carrot at the end of the stick for me at least was, I have to drag myself to physio. I have to drag myself to these like aqua fit style classes, whatever, just so I can do this new thing called triathlon. And I've been hooked ever since. I got a job at a bike shop. I ended up eventually, as you said, owning a chain of bike shops, and now I own the company that I did my first triathlons with. So it's a bit of a full circle story, but it really took a bit of a road to get there.
That is crazy. So how did you land yourself in with Somersault? Was it by volunteering like most people or?
So it's I've seen every corner of Somersault. So it's one of those things where if you look back, you kind of see like breadcrumbs along the way. When I was 12, I did my first somersault race and didn't really know what somersault was. It was part of like my soccer team did the 5K kind of thing.
Right,
So
right. Okay. Yeah.
I had done an event, and then as I got older, I did some of their events, not because I knew them necessarily as the go-to, just kind of I wanted to do a 10K, yada yada. So I'd done some of their events, and then when I got into triathlon, I started doing their events again, in triathlon and MultiSport and duathlon. And then I started volunteering. And then when I became the VeloFix guy, I became a sponsor. So I'd known Somersault over the years as an athlete, as a volunteer, as a sponsor. And then a couple of years ago, I was a race director for one of their events. Little did I know that that was kind of the last straw that brought me into kind of an ownership role. The timing kind of worked out, but yeah, I had seen the company from every angle before I became the owner.
Yeah. So we know if anybody here who's heard of Somersault, it's been around a long time. How many years has been?
30, almost 35 years.
That's crazy. That's a crazy long time for a event company to be around because they do everything. Like, how many events do you have on the schedule this summer?
Every year is a bit different. Some events are kind of keystone events that they've been there
Right.
for some of our events, like the National Capital, they've been there since the mid 80s, and that one's never going to go away. And then some events are kind of one-off event that you do for certain reasons. But this year we have 11 events in the calendar. We might add one or two more, but we do 11 events, and each event has sub-events. So when you go to that National Capital, you can do kind of like you said, the try, the sprint, Olympic. We have other stuff going on too. So we have events within the events, but we have almost a dozen race days this year.
That, and it's crazy because, like, literally, like you said, 12 years old at events, and that's what's nice about Somersault is that it's such a local, and I don't want to say like family, like a family can participate, and there's because of all the different categories and events within the event that you have, because like it's just crazy because I volunteered. Not only did I try one, I did the Smith Falls
Yeah,
triathlon in that little,
that little bay.
that little canal. Ah!
Yeah. And that's
And
Canada's oldest triathlon, believe it or not.
I bet. Like, I don't know, the soaps, the scum in there is just like
Yeah, we don't do that one anymore, but it's still around, and it's a long-standing event. Yeah, the longest standing triathlon in Canada.
and and I love that you know, if you're getting into triathlon, because I've always recommend as clients, like if you're going to get into it, try the easy ones. Like don't go straight to the half iron and Ironman distance when you've never tried one, you don't have a bike, you don't know how to transition. I love that you have the short distance all the way up so people can progress. And I think that's the natural way that any athlete should. And you also have all the running races too.
That's it. And we even have relay options too. So if you have someone, let's say, who likes to swim and likes to bike, but they have bad knees or whatever the excuse is, right? We do
I'm
offer
like,
swim events. There you go. Exhibit
I
A.
don't want to swim,
Yes,
but
if you
I'll
can
ride
stick
the
with
bike.
somebody into swimming, you guys can do a relay together or do a
Yeah.
duathlon. We do a run, bike, run. We have swim cycles that avoids the run. We have duathlons to avoid the swim. We got you.
I'm always, yeah. And also my club, Cycle Fit Chicks, would volunteer. We volunteered there for, I don't know how many years, maybe 5 years for the Canadian and at the water station. And so it always amazed me how many categories you had going on and how you organized so that there was like the overlap, the finishing, like how do you keep them coordinated? Like, okay, you have to share a little bit about how all of that works because
It's a lot of work, and that's part of the plan for 2022 is we added some more events. So historically a lot of our events were everything, you know, even I'm going back a couple years here, we used to even have like multi-sport events that involved like canoes and kayaks, and we had
yeah,
stuff.
you added the kayak canoe bike run.
Yep.
I was
We
like,
even had the rollerblading races. Like we had
oh,
a lot of options. So this year, what I'm doing is I have more events. We've gone to a dozen events where we had 9 the last year we were in operation, kind of thing. But each event's going to be a little more focused. So some events are going to be multi-sport only, where we don't really do some of like the fun run 5Ks. But
right.
then we're going to have more running events that are running only. That way, everyone kind of
Oh,
feels like their race has a little more substance, a little more attention to it. But even then, like at the Canadian, for example, we're going to have, gosh, I think 9 different races going on at once. So there's a lot of work involved with the mental gymnastics or logistics of getting it all organized. But then you have to tie in external partners where sure we might want things to run a certain way, but the NCC might only give us a permit for a certain amount of time, or the city might only allow access to the waterway between this hour and that hour. So it's if you're into logistics and protocol and operations like I am, it is just the puzzle of a lifetime, and it's so much fun. But I can totally see how it's not everyone's cup of tea. It is literally juggling 30 some variables at once.
yeah. And if, for you guys who are just listening, the NCC is the National Capital Commission, and they own certain parts of Ottawa, like green space and the Parkway. I imagine is probably one of them. And then the city, of course, they have their own like timings. And if you're using parks and beaches, and like
Mhm.
it's a lot of like Adam says, moving pieces that you have to, you have to abide by everybody's rules. And like you said, how many events do you have going on at that Canadian? Like
Yeah, I mean, it
9?
can be now this year will be closer to a dozen or so, like between
Yeah.
9 to 12, depending on how it all works out. But there's been years where it was 20 plus, and
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
And that's in one day, everybody.
yeah,
So at different times. So when we volunteered, we would volunteer for the water station, which was like a 12-hour shift. Of course, not everybody stayed 12 hours, but you had like multiple different people going by or different categories, different of races. And you're just like, okay, what's that number for? And what's, like, so you're trying to keep track and just know your people. And it was a lot of fun being on the sidelines. So you said that you've broken it down so it's more specific, which I think is probably really smart. So
thanks. Yeah, I think a lot of businesses in general could use kind of like an update or a facelift, especially with the last couple of years. It gives us kind of a license to renew ourselves. So a lot of things are being changed this year, and I think it'll be really, really different for those that have done our races before, they'll see the big difference in the professionalism and the value. So I think it's kind of a fine line where you're totally right, where we want to be inclusive and we want to be affordable and we want to be accessible, but you don't want to be cheap and you don't want to be cutting corners, right? So there's this value proposition kind of thing. So we're trying to find really cool ways, and I think I've done a great job of like finding all these cool things that make the event so much more fun and so much more valuable without increasing the cost, without making it feel elitist and exclusive and yada yada. So it's going to be really, really fun this year.
So what are your fees for your events?
Yeah, so it's like a 5K, for example, is $50 for most of our races, and a try to an Olympic can vary in price, but on average a triathlon's like $85. So we're one of the most affordable events in the city, or in the all of Eastern Ontario. We're competitive and beat the price of most of our competitors, and you get more for that value. Like our Winterman running event that's coming up, you get like hot chocolate and you get chicken broth, and we have massage therapists on site, and the medal is 3¼ inches big and custom to every event. And we've done a lot of cool things like that without bringing the price up.
All right, let's talk about that Winterman, because that is really close. Now, for everybody who's listening, if you're a local and you like winter stuff, this event is really cool. I've never done it myself. I just watch from the sidelines, but it is skate, cross-country ski and run.
Close. So that's the Winterlude Triathlon, which is not Somersault, but it's owned by a very good friend of ours. I think you know Rick Hellard.
Rick Hellard, yeah.
Yeah, so it's every year it changes, because every year the conditions can just totally muck about with what's accessible.
Yeah.
But typically, yeah, you can skate on the canal, then you run alongside the canal on the path, then you go cross-country skiing. And that to me is just like the coolest race, and I do it every year I can, and it's one of the qualifying events for the Rudy Award. So it's totally an icon in the area.
Yes. Now, what about yours?
So our Winterman is just a running event. It's an official Winterlude event, but it's also like a true Somersault event where it's inclusive to everybody. We do a 3K, a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon, a full marathon, and marathon relays. Our marathons are Boston qualifiers. It's a fully certified course. It's right along the Sir John A. Macdonald Parkway. You run kind of from the Innovation Center, which is a cool building in itself if you don't know it, and you run to the museum, you run to Island Park. You get to see really cool parts of Ottawa for as little or as much as you want, from 3K to 42.2.
Wow. So when is that one?
That one's coming up on Family Day weekend. It's February 20th. So there's still time to sign up. But we're closing in on sold out soon. So there's not too many spots left, but there's some spots left.
How many people are you taking? Like overall, that's with all the categories.
Yeah, so we had to limit it a lot this year just because of COVID and all the policies. So we're limiting it at 500.
For that's over all of the categories.
Yeah, so that'll include all 5 distances. 5.
Okay,
yeah.
so you said it was February
20th.
20th. Okay, so if you're listening and you want to register, this is the time to do that for that particular event. And you can always check out the Winterlude Triathlon, which is always a lot of fun. I know Rick's had to struggle with the ice. It's like a run, ski, run, if there's ice there or not, because it's on the canal. So let's talk a little bit more about the summer. So everything's open for registration. When's the next event you have on?
Yeah, so we have the Winterman, and we have another running event where it's just a 5K. It's a fundraiser for frontline healthcare workers. So that's going to be a run only, and that one's a special event. It's our first time doing it, and it's going to do a lot of good things for a lot of good people. And then we have our first triathlon and our duathlons with the Early Bird at Carleton University.
Oh gosh, that one is what, May?
Yeah, May long weekend. I think it's May 20-something this year. There's a lot of dates in my head. I don't have them all written down, but it's...
Yeah, I know. I'm like that too. Yes, I know it's on paper. Just go but yes, I remember the Early Bird as well. I think we used to help out there too.
Yeah. That one's great because you have the pool swim too. So for those of us that either aren't great swimmers or just couldn't get to a pool the last 2 years because of lockdowns, I mean, you get to swim in a pool instead of open water. A little safer as time trial starts, so you don't really know where you are in the pack. It's kind of a good litmus test to see where you are.
Yes, and that's a great one to do if you're considering getting full on into triathlon, because you're in the building, and then you have to transition to whatever is like outside, to your bike, and then your run. I love it. So what else can we expect? No, okay. So Adam, when did you take over Somersault fully, completely?
October 2021. So it hasn't been that long, but I've been involved with the company for years. So it wasn't like I was starting from kind of ground zero. But yeah, it's only been a few months since I've been the sole owner.
I was going to say, are you a partner? But you're a sole owner. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
that's it.
Wow. Now here's some, okay. So how do you stay organized? I have to ask you.
It's are you familiar with Gantt charts? I have a Gantt chart that would make a project manager jealous. It's an organizational kind of flow chart on Excel where it has, let's say it's an Excel sheet, but so every page is one event, and for every event we have, let's say, and I'm not joking, like the 110 things we have to get done to make an event work. Getting the permits, hiring the police officers, designing the medals, ordering the medals, yada yada yada. There's over 100 things, and then you kind of lay out those deliverables over time, so you kind of know that these are the first things that have to get done, and here's the second things, and there's kind of waves of deliverables that go on. So you can imagine if we'll round it off at 100 items per event, and we have almost a dozen events per year. There are a lot of little things that have to be kind of kept on top of, but it's all kind of processed through the Gantt chart and Google Calendar and everything else. So it's a whole behemoth on its own, but I try and stay on top of it.
Is it just you, or do you have employees working with you?
So we have some really great people that we hire for race day that take care of a lot of the logistics. And if you've been at Somersault races, you kind of know who they are. These people have been around for a long time, and they're kind of like the face of the business to a certain extent. And they're just awesome people. But I'm the only employee at Somersault outside of race day. It's just me.
Wow. I haven't heard that word Gantt chart since I took project management in Algonquin College. That was like 99.
Yeah, and it still holds true. A Gantt chart is still the go-to for project managers.
Well, I know. And you know what? I should probably start using one for my event. It's going into that 6th year, the time trial just here. So it's very basic, and that's why it's easy to manage as one person. But there's different things that have to start happening now, right? Like in January, like all the requests and getting the police on board, the fire station, the municipalities, getting their okay before going on and getting their help and stuff. So, yeah.
People don't realize that it's a one-day event, but it takes 360 some days to organize it. Like planning for next year begins the day after this year's event, kind of thing. It's really fun because it's a lot of work that people only kind of see the tip of the iceberg of. But it's just so fun to know that it was all this culmination of effort and time that brought together a really fun product on race day.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay. So as we finish up, where can we find everything? Where can they find you? Is there any last little tips or information you'd like to share? I'm just trying to think of any other questions I'd like to ask, but
sure. Yeah, generally we're not hiding. We're pretty easy to find. You can find us on somersault.ca. You can email me directly. It's adam@somersault.ca. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We do a little blog on our website. And I coach for a couple different clubs in the area. I volunteer.
You coach too?
Yeah. I coach for a couple of clubs in the area, and I also am an athlete myself. So you'll see me around, and if ever you catch me, on a group run or at a master's swim class or on deck or whatever it is, come say hi. I'm pretty easy to find.
Wow. So you're not busy right now because everything's kind of locked down, isn't it?
Yeah, so there'll be a lot of work right now, kind of revamp all the programs to meet the new requirements for the current phase that we're in. And then we're also only 4 or 5 weeks away from the bike business taking off like wildfire. And Winterman's 3 weeks away. Our frontline 5K run is coming up a few weeks after that. So we're not in the thick of it, but there's a lot of stuff going on.
Do you ever feel really anxious about what's going on if something's not going right?
Yeah, I like to compare it The analogy I often use is like, let's say you're trying to do jump rope with a glass full of water. The water's always kind of trying to tip over, and then by doing my work, I'm kind of, let's say, drinking the water and like bringing the level down, so it's easier to manage. But there's always just something being added to my cup. There's always just, more workload, or like today's deliverables, or a new set of provincial requirements that make my cup just fuller and fuller, and I'm trying to manage it all. And it's kind of a balance to make sure I'm not burnt out and stressed. But it is a constant struggle between trying to bring the workload down and it just constantly piling up. Like right? It's
Well, it's seasonal, it's cyclical. It's like, same thing year after year. What am I going to tweak a little bit of this year? How's it going to look? The dates are kind of the same, and the lead up to, so because we're starting to get ready for our club. But as a club, as because you coach, things are changing, right? Like with regards to, requiring passports and things like that. So what's the club going to look like this year? That's, and we have to start thinking about that now, because people want to register. We need to start, opening up registration and filling it up and figuring those out. But it's these last couple of years, I'm sure you felt, well, you took over the business halfway through, or last year, I should say. It's just, sometimes I find that the most stressful part is dealing with not only everything logistically from the club or your business, but everything that's outside that you have to, account for.
Yeah, and the stuff that you can't control is obviously stuff you can't control. So it's hard, it's frustrating, because it's things that you just by definition can't control. But it's just so easy to get beat up on those things because you plan for all the what ifs. That you can't predict, right? It's ask any small business owner or entrepreneur. The last 2 years, they totally get it.
Yeah. So awesome. All right. Well, you can find them on Somersault. And so like I said, if there's anybody locally to Ottawa or even around the region, Brockville, Cornwall, Montreal, I'm sure you have people come from all over to do your events because they have been around for so long. Oh, give us some of the titles, like some of the names of your events, because I know a couple of them.
Yeah.
What are the other ones that you're running?
So this year we have the Winter Band, then we have the Frontline 5K, then we have Early Bird. We're going to have Britannia Park, National Capital, and then we're co-organizing the K-Town Tri with MultiSport this year. There's a plan to bring K-Town into the Somersault family, but that one is co-organized. And then we have the Brockville Thousand Islands Triathlon, which you run through.
I did that one. I did that one.
There you go.
Do they still drop people off in the middle of St. Lawrence?
Not quite anymore. We've adjusted that a little bit, but now you get to run through the railroad tunnel, which if you haven't done is the best run feature I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
And then we have the Canadian, and we have Fall Colors, which is our Thanksgiving Day run, which in 2022 will be my 1-year wedding anniversary. So every year I'm going to celebrate my wedding with a race day.
Oh,
there you go.
I hope you're going to do something after.
Yeah, exactly. There's always something to do.
All right. Well, awesome, Adam. This has been great. So like I said, anybody who is thinking or contemplating about triathlons, this is the place to start and actually grow, because they have the platform for you to do that. It's, it's friendly. They're nice and not too challenging events and courses. So Somersault, make sure you get them. Thank you, Adam, so much for coming in and sharing with that. I didn't even think about Somersault, but I'm glad that we brought this in here. And for our locals who are looking for something different, this is it. Thanks a lot, Adam.
Thanks for having me.